Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's another Wednesday night show. I'm Austin Eldridge. He's Nick Filipich. You know us, you love us. We're here to preview Auburn coming up this weekend. Before we get into that, though, we're going to quickly recap what happened last week with Ole Miss and Vanderbilt up in Nashville. Ole Miss getting the 52-28 win, getting that backdoor cover right in the last play of the game, much to the chagrin of the sports bettors everywhere. Nick, it was, as per usual, a scary first half for Ole Miss against Vanderbilt. We talked about on the show, Ole Miss always comes out of the gate slow against Vandy, and you just never know what crazy situation is going to come up in the Vanderbilt game this time. And sure enough, Vanderbilt jumped out to a 13-3 lead at one point. And Ole Miss looked like they were sleepwalking, and it was getting a little nerve-wracking for us there. But in the end, Ole Miss turned on the Jets. You had several keys to the game that you talked about prior to that Vandy game. So what did you see based on your keys to the game, and how well did Ole Miss do there?
Well, I think even you had mentioned it, the pass game, we definitely had the opportunity, and you saw that with the big touchdowns, 2 to Mingo and 1 to Watkins. I think they definitely hit on those. And then I think we did okay. Obviously, the first half and second half were a lot different. I think especially from a defensive line standpoint, there in the first half, they were kind of almost running at will. And that was one of my keys, to kind of stifle their running game. And I think they did a heck of a lot better in the second half. And, so I think that was basically it. The pass game, the stopping their run game, and then some, the play action with their Mike Wright, who really, to my surprise, didn't play as much as I thought he would.
Yeah.
And kudos to that AJ Swan. He played a pretty good game. Really not allowing Mike Wright to play too much. You kind of got to ride with the hot hand. So like you said, the first half was definitely, I wouldn't say I expected it, but I wasn't surprised, kind of coming off that big emotional win against Kentucky. And but they definitely right the ship there in the second half and put the game where it should have been.
Yeah, AJ Swan is a bright spot for Vandy if he stays there. Of course, there was a lot of talk after that game that he might be a hot commodity in the transfer portal,
right,
particularly if he continues to improve. We'll see. Of course, that's all speculation. Nobody really knows. But, yeah, AJ Swan, he had a great game, as you mentioned, 27 of 38, 281 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So he kind of had his way with the Ole Miss defense, at least early. And then, as you mentioned, the tackling early on, we that was one of the keys is when the quarterback gets out and runs, because you got to get pressure. And Ole Miss wasn't getting pressure early because we saw what happened when they did. It was bad throw after bad throw. So once they started getting the pressure, that's what happened. Now, Shepard is just another animal for Vanderbilt. Just an unbelievable wide receiver. But he was actually outperformed by Jaden McGowan. McGowan actually had 104 yards. Shepard only had 87, but boy, it was a strong 87. And he just looks like a man amongst boys out there, just leaping up and over, making some incredible catches. So Vanderbilt, as you said, pretty much verbatim on our show, they're still D1 athletes. This is still an SEC football team, and they got some players. Just because they're Vanderbilt, they've got some players, and they came out there and they were ready to go. But in the end, Ole Miss's talent won out, I should say. And I thought the key to the game that we discussed that I most noticed in the second half was, as we talked about, how many plays Ole Miss started to run. Even though there were 3 drives in a row that were only 1 play. But It was just the speed of the offense, the talent, the ability to substitute in. And then Vanderbilt got younger on their depth, and that started to prove to be an issue, particularly with the Watkins 61-yard play. And then, of course, 2 70-plussers from Jonathan Mingo, who, of course, set the record now for the most yards in a single game by an Ole Miss receiver ever with 247. He passed Elijah Moore, who also set the previous record against Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt, hey, appreciate it. We set records with you guys. But no, Mingo, what a day. Just a fantastic performance from him. I really liked that he really got involved. And I don't know what you want to add to that, but just a phenomenal day, really showing that he's a head and shoulders above other talent in this league when he's on.
Yeah, I think definitely it was good to see him kind of get going. I definitely envision him being the number one guy, and I think he still is the number one guy, but obviously before the Vanderbilt game, the stats didn't say that. It was Malik Heath, but And even, we've seen Mingo for the past 3+ years, just be, that big body receiver that can kind of, rough you up and go up and get it. And he can also burn you, which you saw him do a couple times. And it's good to see him get involved, and I'm excited to see what else he can bring.
Yeah, and of course, Jackson Dart finally had a little bit of a coming out party, made a couple of mistakes, like he tends to do. He threw 2 interceptions that were just flat out bad interceptions. You can't throw. You just can't throw those footballs. He's young. He's going to make mistakes. Today, in the weekly coaches press conference, Lane Kiffin was asked what he would like to continue to see improve from Jackson Dart, and his response was, well, I'd like him to quit throwing the ball to the other team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's all you can say. But, I mean, you don't want your quarterback to throw to the wrong team, but 448 yards on 25 of 32, that's only 7 incompletions. And counting the 2 interceptions, that's only 5 incompletions plus 2 interceptions. He also threw 3 touchdowns. Fantastic performance from him. If he can just get his head in the game enough where he doesn't make that split-second bad throw right over the middle across his body like have been almost every interception he's thrown this year, he will be really solid. We really saw the deep ball working from him. That throw, those 2 throws to Mingo over the middle were just phenomenal. I really showed his skill there. So I really like what I'm seeing from Dart. A big improvement from him. Just gotta quit making those hurried decisions towards the end of the first half. If he can get that controlled, we'll have a much more well-rounded quarterback there.
Absolutely. And I think, with a young quarterback, you're going to get some good and some bad. You're going to have to take the 2, take the good with the bad. And I think, the good's getting better, but, you still kind of have some of that bad. And, if you take away those 2 interceptions, he has a phenomenal game, best game of his career. Obviously, and it was already, but, you have a game where you say, hey, if you can build on that going into his next season, and on top of that, the rest of this season, you feel pretty good. But, and I hate to say this, but, he keeps making those throws, and eventually I think, and I'll say it again, I hate to say this, but it could cost you a game sooner or later. It could cost you a game.
Look at the schedule coming up. These teams are going to start making you pay. I mean, that's
absolutely.
Ole Miss is kind of, Kentucky was a tough one, but Vanderbilt's not the toughest SEC opponent, although they are much improved. Clark Lee doing a really good job there. The opponents prior to that have just not been really good. I don't think we can't be unrealistic. Ole Miss hasn't had the strongest schedule in the world to this point. It's getting strong now. It starts this week, and it's going to be a brutal slate the rest of the way. You make that interception in a 1-possession game at the end of the first half against Alabama or Auburn even, it could be a pick 6. It could be a quick score. It could take you right out of the game, and you can't have that. So 100%, you've got – I mean, I know Lane's kind of making light of it to an extent, but behind closed doors, this is something that I guarantee you he's being very serious with Jackson on is, dude, you've got to quit making those bad decisions. You just can't do it in the SEC.
Yeah, and you mentioned the end of a first half, where whatever, you go throw that interception in a 1-possession game, it takes you out of the game. And we talked about it last show, how Dart had thrown 2 interceptions going into half against Kentucky and Georgia Tech, I'm pretty sure. And so in that Vanderbilt game, we had that ball, I think, with under a minute and a half, I think right around a minute and a half. And I was like, okay, this is where, he's made a boo-boo a couple times. Let's see if he can, get us the points we need. And I think if you go back and look at it, us getting the 7 points on that drive is a turning point of the game. Switches the momentum. We get the momentum going into halftime. We made corrections we need to and came out and just throttled them in the second half.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, the key to the Vanderbilt game, in my opinion, as far as the second half is concerned, because like you said, that score at the end of the first half obviously gets you right back in the game. It gives you the momentum going into the half. But the other team still gets the ball to start the second half.
Right.
That defensive stop on that first drive was the key, because that put Ole Miss in position. Boom, you get a quick score. All of a sudden you're up. All momentum has now swung your way. The defense is woken up, and the rest was history. You gave up that garbage time score towards the end to get them within 14, and then you come down and score, and it was over. So I thought, both of those back-to-back drives, the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, made all the difference in the world. Ole Miss comes away with the 52-28 win. They are 6-0 and already bowl eligible. How about that?
How about that?
And We talked about that in really the beginning of the season, that we thought Ole Miss could easily be 6-0 at this point, looking at the schedule. Kentucky was the one real question mark there that you weren't real sure about. And sure enough, here they are 6-0. They've gotten through the easy part of the schedule. I say that loosely because there's no easy game in the SEC. But now here comes the gauntlet starting this weekend. Before we get into that, of course, you always know them. You love them. Our sponsors that you see at the bottom of your screen. We'll start with HottyToddyTents.com. You see them down there, Ole Miss approved tailgating services. These guys, I say it every week, they only want you to do two things. They want you to buy it, and they want you to fold your chair up when you're done tailgating for the weekend. They will do everything else for you, from sending you an email to let you know where your spot is, even with a map, to setting everything up for you and then taking it all down before you leave. So if you are having a big party at the game, maybe you had a few too many to drink and you can't take that tent down on your own, hey, no worries. They got you covered. They're going to take care of you. They are fantastic. That Kentucky game, they were sold out quick. Guess what? We got another sellout this weekend against Auburn. So hop on HottyToddyTents.com if you haven't already and get your setup complete now before it's too late, because these guys are awesome. You're not going to want to miss them. They even got a shout out on the ESPN network the other day with Kirk Herbstreit was talking on one of the shows, and I'm blanking on the host of the show that was on with him, and I completely forgot. But he gave a shout out to HottyToddyTents.com. He was using them. So the big networks have a hold of these guys now. So
there you go
ahead, hit them up, HottyToddyTents.com. These guys are fantastic. They are professional. They will make your tailgating experience so smooth and so easy for you. You don't have to worry about anything but the game at that point and bringing whatever you want to the tent. And then on the other side of your screen, this is a big week for Dead Soxy guys. We talked about it last week that they had come out with the score sale that up to 60 points, if Ole Miss scored up to 60, however many points they scored, they were going to discount their products up to 60% off for each point Ole Miss scored. That originally was only going to go to Monday. They came out originally with the sale was going to go to midnight on Monday. Well, guess what? It goes all the way to kickoff now on Saturday against Auburn. So you've still got time to go to deadsoxy.com. And after that 52-point outburst that Ole Miss had, you get 52% off. That's more than half off everything, guys. Look at that. Nick with the visuals. I like it. He's got the socks that he got. Don't miss out, guys. You can also use the promo code RebelWalk. You're going to get 52% off your entire order. Do not miss out, guys. This goes all the way to kickoff on Saturday. So get it while you can at deadsoxy.com. And of course, even after that sale is over, you can always use the code RebelWalk at deadsoxy.com to get 25% off site-wide anytime. This is just a little extra. And guess what? Christmas is right around the corner, guys. It's going to be here before you know it. So you want to get some stylish socks for some folks? Now is the time to do it. Deadsoxy.com. Check them out. All right, Nick, we'll start with the sad news going into the Auburn game first. And that is, of course, we all found out this week that Michael Trigg is out for the remainder of the season. A huge blow at the tight end position for Ole Miss, losing him. Now, to an extent, it's not as big of a blow as it could have been, because Trigg, to this point, he only had 156 yards receiving total, and that's through 6 games. Well, not up to the point he got hurt in 6 games, and only 3 touchdowns. But he's still bait out there. He's still a target. Absolutely. He's still someone that keeps the defense on their toes. Huge loss to lose Michael Trigg. I really hate to see him get hurt. He has a broken collarbone, is what we have been told. Now, of course, Lane Kiffin, true to form, he doesn't talk about it. He's not going to talk about the injuries. I tried to ask at the press conference today about Kyron Heath, thinking he might answer about Kyron Heath if we've seen him at all. And apparently he took that as an injury question, and he shut me down. So I got shut down by Lane. Sorry, Lane. I won't ask again. But so I don't know. But I would imagine we're going to see Kyron at least a little bit, along with probably some more touches for Casey Kelly, which means you got to catch the football, because there's been a little struggle there at times this year, but not a lot of targets. So he's really not in the system a lot yet. So it's kind of hard to really get going. But just a blow. I mean, you hate to lose Michael Trigg, especially the week before Auburn.
Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned, he hasn't, been involved as you would have thought or maybe liked, with that big body tight end, kind of given almost like a security blanket to Jackson Dart, given especially since they came from USC together. And you kind of saw it there on that catch he made against Vanderbilt. That ball over the middle that he caught, Dart threw it in kind of a tight window, and Trigg did his part to go get it, and you can kind of see that chemistry. But yeah, it's a big blow to have him go down and kind of But it's good because it gives some more guys opportunities, and we'll be able to see, we've heard all season about the depth that Ole Miss has. So we're going to see, another fold of that come in with, I believe, who's going to be in Kyron Heath, who's definitely going to see some more snaps, as I think he's probably a little bit more of a receiver than Casey Kelly is. But granted, Casey Kelly, is kind of does his job as a tight end, gets his hand in the ground, and gets kind of nasty.
He's a blocking tight end for sure.
Yeah, and you have to have one of those in the SEC when you have some of these teams, especially with the running game that we have. They're going to load up the box. So instead of, you can put a more athletic blocker in there, and if you have to kind of swing him out every once in a while. So, yeah, it's a big blow, but I think the depth that we have is going to kind of I guess, put a little makeup on it a little bit. It's not going to make it look near as bad as it would be maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, where you have, for instance, Evan Ingram gets hurt 3 or 4 years ago, and that's a big blow.
Yes.
So, I think it's bad, but it's not all as bad as I think many people might think.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss has had a great history with tight ends. You look at, obviously, Evan Ingram, very well remembered. Cody Core kind of played a bit of a tight end type of position when he was there. I mean, just you look at what the tight end position does for Ole Miss and kind of where they send guys and spread them out. A lot of good history there. But they'll be fine. Kyron Heath, I expect to see a lot of reps, like you said. I expect to see him get his hands on the ball more. Casey Kelly, like we said, he's more of a blocking tight end. Michael Trick, he wasn't really blocking much. He was just kind of out there being a receiver or bait, kind of keeping the defensive focus. So I expect to still see Casey Kelly being a blocking and more short yardage tight end. And then you hopefully can air it out to Kyron Heath a little bit and see what he's made of. Obviously, you've got Jonathan Mingo out there. You certainly want to keep him healthy. Malik Heath has been a great bright spot for Ole Miss in the receiving core this year, the transfer right there. And then Jordan Watkins really getting involved last week as well. Breakout game for him. I think Ole Miss is going to be fine. Now, Auburn is one of these teams that you just love to hate if you're an Ole Miss fan. And, of course, no moment is more memorable than Laquan Treadwell about an inch from the goal line and having his leg broken and fumbling the football and Ole Miss losing Atlanta essentially on that play. And then, of course, Auburn comes out with the headline the next day of that picture and with the headline "Finding a Way" in their paper over there. And, of course, that has been kind of locker room material for a while, but it hasn't done much good so far. Auburn has won 6 in a row against Ole Miss. They lead this series. I did not realize just how dominant it was. It's 35-10. In favor of Auburn. It's been all Auburn in this series. The last 6 games last year, of course, 31-20. Ole Miss was missing half of their offense. Matt Corral had to try to do everything himself, and he was getting chased around the whole game because the offensive line was hurt in that game too, and he had no protection. Then the year before that, it was 35-28, a brutal loss. 20-14, brutal loss. 31-16, brutal loss. 44-23, 40-29. It has been heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak against Auburn. No more than the one that cost them Atlanta. But then last year, of course, Ole Miss rolling along, has a generational talent at quarterback, loses half the offense because guess what? We had to play Alabama, the first SEC game of the year, got most everybody hurt, and Matt Corral had to try to do everything himself, and you can only do so much, and Auburn was really coming after him in that game. And he got banged up a little bit in that game, and Ole Miss couldn't quite pull it off. This has to be the year that you feel like if Ole Miss is going to break that streak, it's got to be now. Yes, Robbie Ashford is a good backup quarterback. He did not start the year as the starter, and he is more of a running quarterback. You've got to contain him. But Auburn's only averaging 20 points a game. Ole Miss at 39 points a game. Everything points to this being Ole Miss's game to lose. It's at home. You've got a sold-out crowd. Auburn is struggling. They've got a head coach whose seat just has to be in flames at this point. And yet he still sticks around. Thank goodness. We all wanted them to be here at least this week. We didn't want them rallying around, interim coach or something like that. Nick, keys to the game, you always come up with them. You usually write an article about that during the week as well. So I'm curious what you've come up with so far for how you think Ole Miss is going to come away with victory or what they need to do to come away with victory against Auburn.
Yeah, so It's not out yet, but it should be within the next couple of days. But I wrote it today, and my first key, and you mentioned Robbie Ashford. He's I believe he's in his third year of eligibility. He was previously committed to Ole Miss before decommitting, signing with Oregon. Went to Oregon, didn't play any at Oregon. Is now in Auburn, and he's from Hoover, Alabama. So he's back home. And my first key was, just getting to him early. He's playing on a team that is basically treading water at this point. And I think if you can get to him early and rattle him, have a good crowd, that was another key, some home field advantage like we had against Kentucky. Get him rattled early, hit him in the mouth, and get him playing, in his head versus, just doing what he does and playing football, playing in his head, double thinking. And I think if you can get to him, and then I also we got to protect Dart. We did a pretty good job at it last week, sorry. But not only protect him, but, make some lanes for our running backs. Last week was our lowest amount of rushing yards in the game last week against Vanderbilt. So I think in that game, we could have done better with some run blocking, but teams are going to do a little bit more to stop us on the run and kind of, force Dart to throw the ball. And I think if we can keep him protected, I think, and like you said earlier, all signs point towards us. I believe last I saw it was a 13-point favorite Ole Miss was, which I'm comfortable with that. So I think if we can do those two things, have some good home field advantage, we should be set.
Yeah, and that if that is indeed a 13-point spread, then it has gone down because at one point it was 16 earlier this week is where it was. I'm actually looking right now just to kind of see what we're looking at. And this, of course, comes from Vegas. So I know you can find different odds everywhere you go. But, yes, you are right. It has dropped down to 13.5 in favor of Ole Miss. So the money's coming on Auburn a little bit. And this game typically goes on the under. It doesn't ever go on the over. And it plays closer than it should, regardless of who's the better team most of the time. Ole Miss has just been on the unfortunate end of the heartbreak. Robbie Ashford is who you were just talking about, the key to the game there. This guy his throwing stats have been horrible so far this year. If you got to make him throw the ball. He's 59 Absolutely. For 123. That's good enough for 47%.
47.
Or just under 48% throwing the ball. 3 interceptions, 4 touchdowns, only 874 yards through the air. His rushing, he's got 357 yards rushing on 59 attempts. So the guy's going to run more than he tries to throw in a given
Absolutely.
game. So if you get him out of the pocket, you got to force him to throw. Because if you get it, you got to either contain him on the ground or you got to force him to throw because he's not been a good thrower. Now, history of Ole Miss and Auburn, we saw it last year with Bo Nix, who is at best a mediocre SEC quarterback. Ole Miss made him look like a Hall of Famer last year. I mean, It was just one of those games where he could not miss a pass. It was just so frustrating to watch. So Auburn's just one of those teams. Auburn Jesus is a well-known thing. Hopefully he's not with them this year. We need him to go away for a little while for Auburn.
Ole Miss Jesus. We need him.
Yeah, we need some Ole Miss Jesus. We need Auburn to stop getting all the calls like normally happens when we play them too. That aside, you've got to stay in your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane for sure.
That is the key to this game, in my opinion, is you've got to stay in your lane defensively. You cannot let Ashford get out and run. Tank Bixby hasn't been super good this year, but you still can't take him for granted because he will bowl you over and he will get out and run. He's uber talented. Ashford and Bigsby were both coveted by Ole Miss in the offseason, actually, in the transfer portal, before Ashford ended up committing to Auburn. And turns out Jackson Dart's a pretty good dude, so we're glad we got him.
I'll take Dart over Ashford any day.
Yeah, I would certainly do the same because Ashford just hasn't really gotten comfortable throwing the football. One thing you can't say about Dart is he ain't afraid to throw it. That's for sure. So, stay in your lane defensively. If you do that and just keep Ashford and Bigsby contained, make Ashford beat you with his arm. You play good on the receiving core. Don't take him for granted. Don't let him get behind you, but play the ball, make plays defensively. And Ole Miss, as long as they do what they do on offense and use that running game and protect the quarterback, like you said, offensive line has got to be good. Snaps need to be good. They finally improved last week. Injuries are finally starting to get there a little bit on the O-line. They're starting to get a little healthy. So if we can do what we need to do on defense, I feel like that's the key to this game because Ole Miss, we know they should be able to score against this team.
And I wanted to throw another thing in there. You mentioned about forcing Ashford to throw it, but another thing I found today is that he has 7 fumbles this year, and he's played in all 6 games. It started. This will be his 4th start coming up. But if you can put some pressure on him and hit him, get all 11 hats to the ball, he might cough it up. And like you said, these games are normally tight, and if you can get a fumble out of him, and jump on it and get some points, that'll that could sway a game, like we've seen, turnovers can make or break a team sometimes or a game.
Yeah. I mean, that is key to get to the football, swarm the football.
Yeah.
Ole Miss has forced several key fumbles this year. We saw a couple against Kentucky. We saw the one last week against Vanderbilt on the backwards pass. If you can get that, if you can force those broken plays and get to that football and put yourself in good field position, that's all it takes right there. In the SEC, you've got to be able to you've got to come out on top of that turnover battle, and you cannot allow that other team to move down the field flawlessly and quickly. Auburn has given up almost 1,200 yards through the air. They've given up a little less than 1,000 on the ground. So again, this is another one of those teams that looks like the passing game could be more promising than the running game. This is an SEC West team, just like Vanderbilt. They're not some, slouch just because they're having a down year. These are SEC athletes, and they are going to come into Ole Miss with a chip on their shoulder. They know all the noise around Brian Harsin. They know all the noise about how bad they've looked this year, and Ole Miss is a heavy favorite. But they know they've won 6 in a row. They're not scared of Ole Miss. I can guarantee you about that. Yeah. So Ole Miss is going to have to come out there, and you don't need to fall behind 13-3 to Auburn like you did to Vanderbilt because it's going to be a lot harder to come back in this game.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned, they got the chip on their shoulder, and I don't know maybe what they're thinking about this, but they have 2 of their guys from last year that are on the other team now. There could be a little bit of bad blood there. I don't think there's any from our guys, but, say, hey, you left us, now we're going to beat you, or we're going to try our damnedest to beat you and make you wish you didn't leave. So, I think
same thing with Kentucky. You had Jacquez Jones and Keidron Smith come back to Oxford. Same thing with Auburn this week.
Right, exactly. And I think it's real good to, and it's kind of getting weird like that, where you play Kentucky, where you have 2 of your other former players on that team. And then you have Jared Ivey, who was at Georgia Tech, and you go to Georgia Tech this year. And I think Lane alluded to it this season. It's like playing in the NFL. We'll say, hey, last year this guy was on our team, but he left in free agency. And so, and I think it could benefit, Ole Miss having 2 Auburn guys on their team and saying, hey, same coach. You have J.J. Pekees playing defense, and he played offense last year. So, that can be a little help, give some specifics on, maybe what everyone doesn't know about the Auburn offense, that could give us a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, and another thing offensively, we talked about a little bit with Vanderbilt last week, I should say. Ole Miss makes more play or runs more plays in a game than Auburn has. Auburn's run 396, Ole Miss 426 so far. If you can wear them down, Auburn doesn't play as fast as Ole Miss does. And the last time Auburn scored 20 points in a game was game number 2 against San Jose State. They put up 12 in a loss to Penn State. They put up 17 in an ugly win against Missouri, 17 again in a loss to LSU, and 10 last week to Georgia. This offense has not been scoring. And that's not – Georgia is a really good team. LSU's been up and down. Missouri's not a good team. They played Georgia well. Obviously, they played up to Georgia. That Auburn-Missouri game was just one of the most horrible games to watch if you watched it. But Auburn's not scoring.
Right.
Don't let them score. Don't let them get in the end zone. That's I mean, I know that sounds like, don't let them get in the end zone. But this team has not been getting in the end zone. Don't be the team that starts letting them. Don't let them get that confidence. Don't let them start finding it. Don't let Ashford all of a sudden have 2 or 3 touchdown passes on you. You don't want to wake up a sleeping giant, particularly one who knows they're in desperation mode for a win.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you allude to that, not letting them get in the end zone. And I watched some of that Auburn-LSU game 2 weeks ago. LSU kind of, had some busted coverages, And if you let them make a play, they're going to.
Yeah.
They're SC D1 athletes, and they're at Auburn for a reason.
Yep.
So, if just like, every week from here on out, I'm going to say, if you let them beat you, they're damn well going to.
Yeah.
So, I think, like you said, don't let Ashford have that good game and let him get that confidence, because he's only starting his 4th college game, and like I said earlier, if you can get to him early, get in his head, I think that'll bode really well for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and the crowd going to play a big part of that. You got to rattle him. Lane Kiffin talked about it already. He was super pleased with the crowd against Kentucky.
Right.
He wants that exact same atmosphere. It's the same kickoff time, same network. 11 o'clock on ESPN.
Rinse and repeat.
Get there early and be loud the whole game. It's amazing what that stadium can sound like. We've not been super used to it. Ole Miss is not, hasn't been one of these stadiums where you just hear the raucous cheering all 4 downs. They were like that against Kentucky, and it really made a difference in the game. Hopefully we'll see that again this week and really get in those players' heads, throw off their communication. Don't let them get in a smooth offense, get the defense amped up. These kids, I know some people may not believe it when the kids say it, but they do. They feed off of that.
Absolutely.
That energy plays into them. If it's dead in the stadium, they might sleepwalk through the game. But if it's raucous and loud and that stadium is shaking and they hear the roar as they come out on the field, they're going to be amped. They're going to be pumped. They're going to be playing hard. Perfect example was game day last year when A&M came to town. That was one of the best defensive games we've watched. They lit up Texas A&M last year. Absolutely. That defense was incredible. They feed off of that energy. We need that energy this weekend, and hopefully we will have it again because it was incredible watching it against Kentucky.
Yeah, it was, and we talked about it last week. That environment against Kentucky was. I've only been going to Ole Miss games for 5 or 6 years now, but that's, of course, those first 2 or 3 years I had were kind of very bleak. But here lately, that stadium, and I think if we win Saturday, I think that'll mark 10 in a row at home. So the guys are coming up and showing. We got it. Showing up, we got to show up for them as fans. So if we can do that, that'll give us another edge over Auburn. Like I said again, get to Ashford, and if we can do that, run it up.
Yeah, and I'm checking that right now. Let's see. Last year they did not lose a game at home.
7-0 at home, I believe.
So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You are correct. And then they have won, of course, every game so far this year. So they are indeed looking for that 10th. Is it the 10th consecutive home win? I
believe. Is it 10 or 11?
Let's see. 8, 9, 10, 11. This will actually be 12 in a row.
Oh, wow.
If they beat Auburn. 12 in a row at home if they beat Auburn this week. Wear powder blue this week. Nick's got the powder blue on as well. Powder blue is the color this week. It'll be 11 o'clock kickoff on ESPN if you can't make it. And be loud, be proud, bring the party, bring the hammer, bring the noise because they feed off of that. And Ole Miss has a chance to go 7-0. That doesn't happen at Ole Miss.
Hasn't happened since 1952, Austin.
Yes, or was it? No, I think it was 60. Was it 60, the championship year? It was either 60 or 62.
60 was 6-0. They lost their 7th game. They lost their 7th game in 62, I believe.
I thought they had an undefeated season somewhere in there, but I may have looked at it wrong.
And I could be wrong. But
either way, it's been a long time.
A long time.
Bottom line, we're 7-0. So this is a rare opportunity for Ole Miss to be 7-0 and move up a little bit in the top 10, coming into just a gauntlet, guys. Guess what? You've got Auburn, then you're at LSU, at Texas A&M, home Alabama, at Arkansas, home Egg Bowl. It doesn't get easier from here. This is the last game that Ole Miss has like a really big chance to win, so to speak, that they're really kind of be heavily favored in, although they are technically favored so far in their remaining games. The two, Alabama and Mississippi State, are kind of the outliers as far as nobody really knows what those are going to look like yet. Alabama's going to be favored in that game, especially. It's just Alabama, but we'll see. We'll talk about that more when it comes. But all right, so prediction time, Nick. We were really kind of close last week.
We were kind of.
You said it was going to be, I believe you said 49-16 or 13. You said 49-13, and I said 42-16. It was 52-28. So Vandy got a few more points than we hoped. but our prediction for Ole Miss was real close.
Yeah.
This is another one. Auburn, it's so hard to predict a score on this game, and it's even harder to pick a high score because it just doesn't happen.
It is. Yeah. I was thinking earlier today, waiting for this, I was like, 40 points. I mean, I'd like to see 40 points, but I think that's going to be hard to come by. And then I kind of wanted to hang 20 on our defense, but I was like, I don't want to do that to them. But like we've said, it's one of those games where, it's almost like you never know what's going to happen, especially at this point in the schedule. From here on out, it's going to be really hard to start picking some of these games. It could be lopsided. It could be a 1-point game. So it's really hard to pick. But if I had to pick, I think I'm going to go 38-27 Ole Miss.
38-27. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. We gave up 28 to Vandy, so it's kind of hard to – but I think the defense is going to bounce back a little bit. I think the crowd's going to be good. I think they're going to feed off of that a little bit. You're right, with a high-scoring game, getting to 40 points is going to be really hard to come by offensively. I was thinking 35. So I'm going to go – I think Ole Miss goes 35, and I think they're going to give up – I'm going to say 35-25. I think it's going to be a 35-25 Ole Miss. And they're going to finally break the losing streak to Auburn. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it's 72-0. And I will gladly take that.
Yeah, we'll take it.
As long as Ole Miss has the 72, that is. So I hope we put it on them, run it up. This is one of those teams that you just want to just take it to them, man. You know,
absolutely.
But we'll see what happens. We'll go. You got 38-27. I've got 35-25. Let us know your predictions. As always, you can find us on Twitter. I am at Austin on Air 1021. He is at Nick Philippich 11. Didn't show up on this background tonight for some reason, but it'll be there next week. You guys know where to find him at Nick Philippich 11. Check him out, and he'll have an article on the keys to the game coming out either later today or tomorrow. So be sure and check that out at the Rebel Walk as well. As always, we really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in on a Wednesday night and making us a part of your evening. Ole Miss and Auburn, 11 o'clock on Saturday. Wear your powder blue. Be loud. Be proud. Be there early, and stay late and be loud the whole game. Ole Miss looking for their 7th win of the year and to break a 6-game losing streak against the Auburn Tigers. Until next time, I'm Austin Eldridge. He's Nick Philippich, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great night.